It has been a really amazing few days and discussions, and with the decisions that were made last night. Shelby, I'm going to get you to come in. Yeah, he's standing at the door there. Yeah. With the decisions that were made last night, obviously we have now a very positive opportunity and transition, which the committee, and just to announce as well here formally that Paul Bernstein will actually be joining the committee. So we're very pleased to say that Paul will be joining the committee, and as you heard from last night, Liz Johnson will be become the chair, which I'll support as co-chair. So this is a transition. We heard lots of different feelings. One thing I forgot to say last night that I should have is that it is absolutely always the intention that we will come back to here, which is the home of the Bonn Conference. That is the plan, and that is never going to lose. As long as we have a currency of doing this and an opportunity to do this, Bonn will always be something that I will support to do. But we want to. I think the advantage, because I didn't have time to go into it last night, of extending this will be to bring other members from the US, and I think the whole area of optometry and the relationship between medical ophthalmology and optometry is crucial, and I think there's a very good relationship in the US on how that works, and I think it could become a model for what we teach in Europe. And without the goal for today, I know we all like to have discussions, and Paul will use his own intelligence to feel if we can have a discussion on certain points, but really what I want to achieve now is, because this has been recorded, right? So we want Paul to do the work for us, as he always does, and he compartmentalizes the various sections. And you may not agree with the conclusions or with the directions that he's suggesting. That's the whole point. So this is a documentation with Paul's opinion as to, what was said, what are the challenges, what are the potential new questions. So we want this session to function as kind of a challenge to all the members to study it, to think about it, and then to come up with your own ideas. So I say this now to the people in the room, but also the people who've had to jump on airplanes. This message is for you. So my objective will be that once we have a time to communicate this, once we get the video, that we will arrange a kind of a Bonn meeting. It will be virtual, and hopefully before Christmas, where we can bring in other ideas. And we platform out from there as to thinking about the next program, new members. Liz will be leading the decisions in terms of location. We'll have to do lots of kind of budget management on the conference. Once we're finished, Jane et al. Will be doing the financial report, and hopefully we've done okay. So I will now invite Dr. Bernstein to the stage to try and wrap up our conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. You've done a wonderful job in organizing this conference. And so, and I hope and I want this session to be very interactive. I don't want to be up here lecturing or anything like that. And so, and my wife Anne will be taking notes, because we need to update even the homework this homework. We'll have a more updated version, and so I'm not thinking about what we said a year ago. She is going to make me today update the slides at the end, so we will have that. So somehow I got roped into doing this homework session years ago at the first session. John sprung this on me, and it's just to be. Now I'm at least have enough gray hair to be doing this. I don't think I had that much gray hair. It's probably given me the gray hair. But this is, I'm being the George Britton of here. This is what George Britton, as one of the grand old men of carotenoid research, and who's been doing it forever. And he's British, and they're very good at doing these sorts of things. We Americans are not usually so good at this. But to just kind of give a summation and go over what we've learned. And so we've been doing this long enough that, that we do this. This is just things to think about, just a brief summation, and think about what are the new frontiers that we want to get at when we get together in 2 to 3 years, and also to kind of grade ourselves as to how well we've done. And so last time, back in 2018, I was able to just summarize year by year, what we've done. And so I wanted to give just a very brief historical perspective of what we were looking at, starting in what we did in 2011. And, back then we were talking about looking at the pathways of lutein and zeaxanthin uptake from the diet into the eye. And clearly we've heard a lot today and still hearing more. We know a lot about it. We know the binding proteins, transport proteins. There's even newer things that we need to discuss, I think, at the next one. Johannes von Lintig has now written about aster proteins, and I don't know if anyone's even heard about aster proteins, but those are a new class of intracellular carotenoid binding proteins that are involved probably in zeaxanthin transport, is what he thinks. And that just came out in a PNAS paper just in March or April, so it's pretty recent. And so that's something that there's still much more to learn. We were back then very interested. Mesozeaxanthin was just coming online, and we really wanted to learn more about mesozeaxanthin, both from a biochemistry standpoint, toxicity, a lot of that. We have a lot more information. We know how mesozeaxanthin is being made. We know, certainly we have a lot of, literally, I suppose, many thousands, if not 1 million people are taking these supplements containing mesozeaxanthin now, and it's proven to be safe. We need to learn more about efficacy, of course. Then we were back then in 2011, we were just thinking about the brain, and that you can see that that's something that we've really incorporated in. And even back then, we were arguing about improved non-invasive measurements of carotenoid assessment, and that's still going on today. And we were talking a lot about some of the clinical studies. AREDS too was relatively recent back then, and I'm trying to think, was AREDS 2 maybe wasn't even out then. I'm trying to think. AREDS 2.
2011, that May.
Yeah.
It was out that May.
Yeah, I think it had just come out.
That ARVO in May. I
Yeah,
remember.
so it had just come out, but we were talking about karma, a lot of other things. So that was 11 years ago. In 2013, back then we were meeting every 2 years. We were still working on uptake, but you could see I added in from the garden to the eye. So we were actually starting to bring in some of the agricultural work that we're still doing now. We were still working on meso and other mesozeaxanthin. And again, that you can see that at that time we were starting to think about more across the lifespan. We were talking about infancy into old age was being talked about then. And then we were learning more, I think it was becoming more and more clear that single point measurements of macular pigment were not telling the whole story. Looking at just what's going on at a 0.5 degree or 1 degree. And as people were starting to use Spectralis more, we realized distributions count really a lot. And so that's something that we've really moved into and done more. And then again, we were talking about AREDS 2 analysis. We were even talking about an AREDS 3, which we'll be talking about again in my last slide. We were starting to, I think, probably based on some of Tos Berenschot's stuff, was talking about carotenoid xanthophylls and inflammation. I think that's maybe some of your first talks might have been at that time. So, and then we were definitely starting to think about genetics of AMD and macular pigment. That was Julie Maris, probably, at least. I don't know if she was at the meeting then, but that was when some of her work. But still is something that's an active area today. And as I emphasized, genetics has really changed in that amount of time. From doing all these kind of somewhat laborious SNP analyses, whole genome and whole exome sequencing is very much available. I order it on lots of my patients. We now, although there still aren't there are some diseases that are associated with macular pigment abnormalities. There aren't a lot, but we've learned so much more in genes. Back then, if I wanted genetic analysis for someone with an inherited retina disease, we'd look at maybe 10, 12 genes. Now, I can get it for free. I can get through the Foundation Fighting Blindness. We can do 350 genes, have them all, and have the results back within a month. So it's changed dramatically, and it's going to continue to become a really important research and clinical tool. Then in 2015, we were working on the macular. I was definitely working on the mesozeaxanthin isomerase. That was probably a little bit, that was just a year or two before we got to that. We still were working on macular pigment, and then this you can see in 2015, Alzheimer's disease was really coming on and changing, and that's, although it was still just the macular carotenoid conference, we realized it was a much bigger picture that we needed to do. And the CREST trials were coming out just at that time, so that's not that long ago. And and then AMD, we were still working on, can we better understand macular pigment's protective functions at a molecular level? And that's still going on today. You know, we heard a couple of very good talks from Christine Curcio and others at this meeting. And then that's where I could see, again, this always has my personal bias, but I was really thinking a lot about carotenoids in infants. I was probably trying to write the grant for the grants, let's say, at least 3 times to get the LZIP study. Actually, probably 6 if you add up private foundations and supplements and everything else. So it takes a while to kind of get these studies going, and so it was kind of nice to announce that. And you saw the first findings. That was one of our first public presentations of that. We just need to get it published. Then in 2018, okay. I'm going to step through. Okay, yeah. So, and we just wanted to, at that time, this is now the last meeting we had, and the one before COVID, we wanted to continue to targeted well-designed clinical trials on nutrition and brain health. I think we understand the importance of these trials. We'd love to have enough funding to do all these trials, but we know we need to do the best that we can, and either through the National Institute of Health, through private foundations, and through the companies. So hopefully we can continue doing those. Of course, basic science, I emphasized back then in 2018, cannot be neglected. We haven't solved all the problems. We need to continue going forward. And we were really, again, trying to standardize and widen the use of macular pigment measurement, both for visual performance, both for measuring macular pigment, but also for visual performance and for cognition. And we wanted to get to establish new and fruitful collaborations, which has been very true and turned out to be very important during the COVID era to keep the collaborations going and keep them going virtually. So that's what we had up until this meeting. So how did we do? Well, what's our overall grade that I give, since I'm the one who gives the grade?
Yeah.
Anyone want to say? It's always the same every year. It's incomplete, but to be done. We still have more to come. But on the other hand, you do get credit for effort, and as always, we get an A+. Everyone's doing a great job. And then, of course, there is extra credit and for doing this in the COVID-19 era. So you get a bonus. So now we can talk about 2022 in the last few minutes. So what do we want to do? And I came up with a few things. Liz Johnson, who was supposed to be here but had to go catch a plane, gave me actually quite a few of these. And this was all done, this was being done this morning, literally. So this is going to be, we can change this and update this. So some of the things that I thought about is it is real that NIH is that the NEI is talking about an AREDS 3 trial. They are open to a lot of things. They realize that supplementation with lutein and zeaxanthin was a great step going from AREDS 1 to AREDS 2. But we need to think about what should we do? What should we be doing differently? Are the ratios correct? It's a 10 and 2. That's what was chosen fairly arbitrarily, I would say, but just as to represent the ratio that we have in the diet. Is that really the important one to do? Should we really increase the zeaxanthin? Should mesozeaxanthin be part of it? That's all open. I'm in contact a lot with Emily Chu, so I'm perfectly happy to represent the people at this conference and all the parties that are interested to at least put that in. And the same goes for the very long-chain polyunsaturated fatty acids. The AREDS 2 study was disappointed that that omega-3 didn't work, and it very emphatically didn't work with what they chose of the 650 EPA and the 350 milligram DHA. So they want to rethink that. Should they be actually using the very long chains if we could synthesize it in kilogram quantities? Those are just things that we can talk about. Other nutrients, we heard about, there can be B vitamins, vitamin D. There's all sorts of things that could be considered in that are all open on the table. It's not certain that's going to happen for an AREDS 3. It's going to be very expensive, but Emily Chu is still director of the clinical studies section, and so that would be at least something to look at. I get also, how can we fine-tune our various methodologies? We had a lot of talks about methodologies here in terms of macular pigment optical density, macular pigment optical volume. We've talked about that. Heidelberg may or may not still be here, but we know they're trying to do it, but they have to live in the new regulatory environment. That was kind of a new thing for me.
Yeah, what they explained to me again over coffee was basically the new technologies that they have to use will make this easier to do in clinic. Mm-hmm. They're not ready, so what they do in the short term, the regulatory piece stopped them, as you rightly summarised. That's what stopped them, and it was significantly so. Yeah. And it's frustrating for people. I also think, because I was speaking about your case, Toss, specifically, and they were saying, well, I said, why could you not just give the software? And they were saying because it's a different set of lasers. The wavelengths, it's different. It's not just the software. So, and I see you shaking your head, so that's fine. What they've agreed to is a conversation with you now, at least, and I think that's been a good outcome for you, at least.
Put it off, I guess, that we had a discussion.
Yeah.
Because it's very important to have this, and many of you do, and others cannot. So I think it's good that we had this discussion, and it eventually led to something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So.
For me than for others.
Yeah, it's been frustrating because the software that right now has not changed in 10 or 15 years, and it's not very good. I think that macular pigment measurement is always shown as those curves. Why is it not in 3D?
Yeah,
Any other place would put that in 3D now.
Well, look, you, Marina Green, and I, and Christine, you showed that lovely photo of that cold Christmas where we were there. That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so we've been dealing with that since,
Yeah. I think what they're worried about putting unapproved software on an approved clinical device. If you have something that's, yeah.
As I explained, we are doing clinical research.
Yeah.
It's not in a clinical setting. It's
It's medical ethical approval in a research setting, but I'll discuss it with them again. But that's what we're here for, not in a clinical setting, in a research setting. And that's different.
Why would they not want you to have it if it's easy? That's the first question I'd ask. So
I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, because you had access to 10,000 sample or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, remarkable.
Well, I don't know whether they're here again. But
No, I think
they're not.
in 2002 or something, we went there to explain them the technique because we already did it at that time. With a home-built machine. I have a paper in IUVS, a parallel with the paper with François Delory, explaining the spatial distribution. Beautiful pictures. So before that, we explain them how, and the ins and the outs to discuss how to continue. So I really don't know why they don't allow me to use it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that's definitely something we will work on. And that's,
Yeah.
Okay, and then just obviously we've heard a lot about other things that are not my area of expertise. The cognition, obviously that's a huge field of trying to assess cognition quantitatively, and we've had some of the experts here, but there are many more who need that we could use input from. And then statistics, we had a good introduction to statistics here, and it's important to have that. And NIH, I can tell you, on grants and papers, is really pushing. You got to be statistically rigorous. You got to declare, if you're going to do clinical trials, you declare what you're going to do beforehand, how you're going to analyze it beforehand, and For our LZIP study, thanks to Emmanuel here, we spent we spent the money to just publish our protocol in a journal, just like everyone, and have that out there. And so that's the way the new normal out there. And then nutritional assessments are always getting better. We heard some about that, and Liz Johnson's been very good about collaborating on some of these studies and being a resource. But it can always be better, and including non-invasive methods. We've heard a lot about the skin carotenoid method, which can be very useful.
And Paul, can I, because you're an expert obviously on the scanner. I think it became news to people here about the Veggie meter.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was familiar with the Pharmanex, and the issue with the Pharmanex for the commercial stakeholders of this is that they don't have access to it, right? So is there something that they have access to? And I believe so with the Veggie meter.
So with the Veggie meter, Werner Gellerman, the person who helped me develop the Raman method, came up with a less expensive way to measure carotenoids using the Veggie meter. It's a reflectance spectrometry method. It's easier to do. It's portable. He's made hundreds of these machines, and they are available for purchase. He sells them for $15,000. I know the amount that it is. They work really well. We have sent. I bought one and gave it to one of my colleagues to use in Nepal for vitamin A screening. It worked perfectly for 2 years in the field, no problems at all. And it's very, very easy to use. So it's available. If people are interested in this, I have no proprietary interest at all in it. But if you write to me, I will get you in touch with Werner directly if you need to. And his company is Longevity Link.
He's not exclusive with any That's
he
his
has
model,
no,
like
it's
Shelby,
available.
actually. You're the same Shelby. You're not exclusive, right? You're anyone wants.
Yeah, there's no tie. There's no ties. If you want to purchase it, it's available. Okay.
That's great to know.
Yep. And it works almost as well as Raman, I would say. Raman is more specific, but it's much more expensive, and there's only five or 10 devices in the world.
Yeah. But
yes. Yeah, Toss.
In nutritional assessments, we should include bioavailability.
Yes.
Just pointed out that diet may be pointing to a higher intake, but then if you look what's actually available, the Irish and Mexican study, that's so bioavailability should be included in nutritional assessment.
And I think so.
One way or another. I don't know how, but
again, for the studies that we do in my department, we don't just go by. We're not only looking at what's going on in the eye. We do the skin, we do serum, we try to have everything. We know that everything correlates, but if a machine goes down, if the data's looking funny, you at least have something more. Yes, Christina.
Paul and John, is there a validated questionnaire for lutein? Is there a validated questionnaire that's easy to come by for our lutein-rich foods?
Absolutely. Dr. Green is a great person to answer that. And before she does, can I say that a generic comment on that before Marina goes into the detail is I've used frequency questionnaires, which you can spend 40 minutes completing. My first 20 odd years ago, I went to Cambridge actually to get help with creating one for carotenoids, and you spend all this time and you end up with milligrams per day, energy adjusted, really brilliant stuff. But in terms of like getting a good measure of what's going on with carotenoid, what Liz Johnson has done is very, very quick and very, very useful. I think the likes of Shelby, Quajo, ourselves, I think Liz actually deserves a very big applause for what she's been able to do to help us do that. So maybe, Marina, you add to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Marina.
So thank you, Christine, because that's a very important point that I wanted to comment. I think it's time to validate the questionnaire. So I suppose we're all familiar with Liz Johnson's screener. It's a highly sensitive, very short. It takes probably 5 minutes only to conduct to the participants. It's very, very sensitive. It targets lutein and zeaxanthin, and she calculates the potential amount of intake in milligrams per day. She helped us design an adapted questionnaire for the Mexican population. It was 5 questions, included corn tortilla and the Mexican diet. And we correlated that to the standard food questionnaire from the National Institute of Health in Mexico. And in the correlation with Liz Johnson's screener was really high, it was 0.7, 0.8. So that's how good the screeners are, and how helpful they are for our clinical trials. So I think it's very important to put all the data together and just validate it, because it's not validated or published. We all go to Liz and say, Liz, can you please help us? This is our screener. And probably we have 500 questionnaires ourselves, and Cuello is just confirming that behind me, that he also has data. And I think it's very important to properly, and across different populations, Caucasian, Latino, Ghanaian. So,
Yeah, it's a great opportunity.
No, I think it is. We use the LZQ, we use Liz's screener for some of our clinical studies, and yes, that's some homework. We're assigning homework to Liz, who's not here, but I think this is an important one to add for Anne too, because Liz needs to publish that.
Can we make it an action that Marina communicates with Liz to get this across the line on behalf of this community? Because I think we will all benefit from something like that.
Because it makes it easier in a grant to be able to say it's been published somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
Although I agree with it completely, we also heard that there are differences between Licorn, whether in maybe a factor of 10 or so, and in eggs are similar. So if you put on eggs, that could be 1 milligram or maybe 8, and for corn even could be 2 or could be 40.
Yeah.
So it's more difficult than.
Yeah.
But if you don't do it, you can't do your trial.
No,
They're
I
saying,
agree.
well, what about diet?
Every trial wants it, even though though I make all the outcomes, the eye and the skin and the serum.
Exactly.
There's always a nutritionist on the panel who
Yeah.
will ask you, we want to check their diet.
Yeah.
You have to adapt it for the culture, though.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Shelley.
That's
yeah.
another problem. Yeah, that's why biomarkers are so good.
Yeah.
Just a fun fact about that, the only scientific document that we have to reference the LSAT screener was a poster presented back in 2015
Here.
that Liz presented for her.
Okay, we need to
LSAT
have that
screener.
published somewhere.
Properly validated.
I think that's a really clear action, right? And let's
Yeah.
make sure we can deliver that. Thank
Okay.
you. Well done, Kristen.
Okay. All right, let's see. We're almost done here. I don't want to keep people too long. Oops, I did.
There you go.
Coming back with me.
Oh,
You got it?
is it gone again?
I can just read them if that, did it just suddenly go up? Oh, there we go.
There you are.
Okay, so next one, connections between the brain, eye, and outcomes. So we talked, these are just things that were brought up at the meeting here, especially microbiome is a hot topic. We need to continue looking at that both in health and disease and the interplay between the eye and the brain. Nutrition and genetics. That's basically what this conference is all about. So, and I think even some of today's talks really kind of started bringing together the eye and the brain even better, even more cohesively than we've seen in past years. So I give you good grades for that. Then next, where are we on lutein? Liz brought this up. Can we ever get a DRI, which may never happen, but I know that some companies have been working on trying to do that. Some are trying, and I think they're focusing on lutein more than zeaxanthin right now.
Daily recommended intake.
Yeah, so it's trying to at least get lutein and zeaxanthin into even more mainstream nutrients that have a recommended level. They're never going to be vitamins, although you could argue no one has a totally deficient diet, I think, but there is. You can argue whether there is deficiency, but it's not a major health problem of having really low levels, but moderate levels have positive health. Our higher levels seem to have better health outcomes, but that's a job that's very hard to fight. And I don't know if any of the industry people, I can see Jim Stringham talking about. Do you know anything? Have you learned yet?
It's been such a struggle. I talked to Liz about it, and so it's been an uphill battle. She built just this massive.
Oh, and I think you also, Monica has something to say, but we can talk. I know.
My voice. She a few years ago built a massive dossier, and I helped her with it. And it was a couple of years of work. Brought it to the government, and
Yeah.
It didn't work.
Lots of work.
It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's disappointing. Does
Yeah.
Europe have an equivalent DRI? Or I noticed on one of the slides from the speakers, one of the speakers we
They were
had,
talking about tolerance.
was it just
That's-
tolerance?
that's
Okay,
absolutely-
sorry.
See, that's
Yeah.
the safety, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Monica?
That's the comment. I don't think that we get it very quickly here in the U.S. Through our government.
Monica,
hopes to
you're
get
in
through.
England.
I'm sorry?
You're in England.
Oh, I'm sorry. But in the U.S., we probably won't get that for a DRI, but we all in the U.S. follow the EU recommendation for DHA. We don't even have a recommendation for DHA in the United States, so we follow everything for the EU for dosage. And so you just need to do it in one place in the globe. Just do
Yeah.
it one place and everybody else will follow.
I think it's a really interesting discussion because I think Liz, being a nutritionist, loves to, and I think the default to lutein because it's what's normally in the diet. I kind of look at it differently, and I'm very interested in your point one, Paul, and I'd very much love to be involved in that discussion. Obviously, from our CREST trials, we talk about efficacy in terms of function. I believe in the fact that we can deliver effective amount of carotenoids, all three carotenoids, and I think that has to be part of the conversation for me, so I'd love to be part of that. I think what I've learned is, if we're to be really honest, any type of supplement, whether it's lutein, zeaxanthin, or mesozeaxanthin, or a combination, it's exactly that. It's a supplement. It's something that's different to what we normally get in diet. So I think it's okay to look at it differently. And then the question is, well, what do we know works the best? And then that comes down to a scientific discussion and looking at the evidence. So that's where my head is.
So that's all that I have on the list here. We can, if you want a little more open discussion and things that should have been on the list that isn't here. Yeah, Tuss?
Well, let's start with carotenoids, lutein, and
It all started many years ago. We've learned from with lutein and zeaxanthin, and now we have these PUFAs and vitamins. But there's a lot of more ongoing. I went to a glaucoma society meeting where nicotinamide is investigated for glaucoma, and since it's brain and ocular nutrition, maybe it would be good to also include those these diseases next time, or invite somebody to give an overview at least to see what are links to brain. I don't know, but there are.
So one of the things I'm kind of concluding out loud is that we're still at a stage. I think we're going to continue to learn from the basic science, and I think Christine's work, for me, I think there's a hypothesis there that people don't understand. I think it's really important that we continue that, and I think that's going to.
I'm excited about the AREDS 3.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. But that was taking me to my last point, which is the technologies. Something as basic. I heard listening to Paul. Paul knows how to do diet, knows how to do skin, knows how to do blood. So he has control of his research question. So we need to make it clear what those right outcomes are, if this is really to scale across research. And I also think at the next conference we should really work hard to really, as a scientific community, debate the technologies that can be used for translation of our science, and I think we should work as a committee to try and engage with the companies, Shelby, Spectralis, whoever believes, and just find a way to safely present the information and show the technologies for the value of that consistency of research and consistency of clinical application.
Yeah, something else maybe we already discussed. Looking for the Horizon program for whether we could apply for a grant. Well, it didn't work out, but maybe this could also be a platform for European participants to look whether we could combine forces and come up with a good idea along those lines, brain, cognition, because it's the hot topics, Alzheimer.
Yeah, I think Marina and I have been communicating with you about these funds available in Europe. And I think we should definitely look at those opportunities, because I think the work we do fits in. Aging is consistent, brain, inflammation, all of these are hot topics. And I think from a European perspective, to be very clear, the funds primarily go to European organisations. We can have collaborators with the US, so that creates a challenge because this is so international. But maybe something for us to yes.
But ARIDS, that's
European funding now includes US partners, so it's a reciprocal.
Yeah.
But
So the American partners will get funded.
Yeah, okay.
sure, but we also are very enthusiastic about the ARIDS 3 trial, if ever. But that will be an American-only enterprise, I guess.
No, ARIDS 1 was partly conducted in Britain, so it can be done.
Then maybe there's also part. Well, we could. Yeah, good to know.
And Paul, can we ask maybe you can't answer this now, maybe you don't, but like who's behind it in terms of like, is it all government funding, or, you know, Bosch and Lomb were involved in one like how do industries that are here that want to know about this get involved in this major potential study?
Yeah. I think Bosch and Lomb is still in the background at NIH, and I don't know, I don't have any more details with that, beyond that.
Yeah. So we need to
But-
understand it.
Yeah.
I think my interest is more about the public health message around carotenoids, because there's been so much, even from, you know, the research that's going to be done in the elderly homes in Ireland, or just, and people are very interested in climate change and sustainability. So those kind of messages getting out, because it's all very well having the research and the publications, and even though there's lots of questions, just being able to tell people how important it is, you know, because people are getting to 60 and 80 and 100, how important it is to protect your eyes and how the carotenoids and your brain, you know, for the future generations, and just keep getting that message out. So just how that...
I think you said this to me already, June, and I agree with you. And I think Antonio did a lovely job today at communicating the importance and his networks. And so can we make this an action as part of our homework that we...
The movies on the Eurocode website, which we can host.
Yeah, we should host them, and we should, yeah. But we don't need to decide today, but we agree, Julie, that an action from this will be that societal connection, you know, the little things we do, you know, breaking down the hard science into, and there was some great examples of that over this conference, people presenting their work in a very simplistic way. So I'm motivated personally by that. I think it's really important that we, and if you look at European funds, to go back to it, you know, there's now a massive emphasis on the requirement to do that type of work where you communicate back to society. Society are now a stakeholder in research.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Jim.
I think that, I mean, concussion and traumatic brain injury is a huge deal. And I know in the States for sure, I can say that with certainty. And it's, you know, the more we learn about it, the more we learn that even very mild, you know, concussive events can have, you know, long-lasting effects on, you know, brain. Obviously, we're brain. There are, you know, a couple, well, 3 or 4 now, really, you know, intriguing and promising animal model trials that have shown, you know, effects of our carotenoids, you know, the ones we talk about the most, I guess, lutein, zeaxanthin, mesozeaxanthin, on, you know, reducing severity, speeding recovery. Again, they're animal models, but it's, you know, looks really promising. And I think that, you know, just looking at that work, I've been talking to some folks about doing work in that area, and I think, you know, that might be a neat sort of call to action, you know, in that area possibly. We discussed disease, and if you look at concussion, TBI as a disease, we can, you know, address it with nutrition.
Well done, Jim.
Okay. Then just next, just our due dates,
Oh, yeah.
in that we have the due dates, you know, there's a Gordon Conference on carotenoids that will be California in January of 2022.
23.
2023, sorry,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
sorry. I wrote that wrong. It was late, but thank you for fixing that. Anna will get me to fix that. There's the International Carotenoid Symposium, which is going to be in Toyama, Japan, in July, about a year from now, July of 2023. And then we have the Bonn Conference, which is, I guess, going to be somewhere in the USA in the summer of 2025. But we're going to have, I guess, an interim check-in later this year.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We're going
And does anyone else want to chime in? Are there any conferences of significance to this group that I haven't included?
It's just, and I think we're actually, in my group, are going to most of those. We intend, so I hope members from this will be there. We hope to see you soon. There's one final point I'd like to put to motion, and it relates to peer review, scientific publication, and what I've seen of late, I'm sure you've all seen it, is kind of a high volume of publications quickly. And when you look at the work that you go to, Paul, and the work we did with CREST and others to do a clinical trial properly, to get IRB, to design a protocol, to have predefined outcome measures and to run through that, which takes so much investment and time. And then you see other papers in our field coming that are making these sensationalized claims in titles, and that these are allowed to get through a peer review in no less than 25 days. And then it becomes part of the scientific literature. And all of us, by the way, me included, I've seen some of the best scientists here put up what I would refer to as predatory journals. I was one of those people that didn't realize where I was publishing. So I just want to kind of start a conversation with the scientists, and I think that the more senior scientists could help here to help us try and understand this kind of ever-changing and what I would view as a dangerous environment, because as a scientist, peer review for me is everything. But it loses that credibility if a publication is being able to add very easily. So that's just a personal view. I've been working on this a while, trying to correct issues that were published in our field, and I can tell you I've never been treated as poorly as a scientist from a journal. I won't name the journal here. It's clear to see. Does anyone else have a view on predatory journals, or does any?
It's a business model.
Yeah.
Probably all of us get the emails every day.
Yeah.
Please can you
An issue or a paper in this very impressive journal.
High impact factor.
Yeah, well,
What does that
but-
mean
but
anymore?
this- And
You know?
the names look like prestigious journals, but
Yeah,
they're not.
They're not. And people complain about IOVS because it takes so long. But I'm okay with that. I don't want it to take as long as sometimes, but I'm happier. I think that type of publication, those ARVO journals are, done well, and the peer reviewer, they're going, like we've also, and I think, Nicole, you've been through an experience, as have I, where has any of you reviewed a paper, you put a lot of time into it, and you give all this critique back, and then the next morning nearly you say, oh, paper's been published, thank you, it's remarkable. They go through the process, the pretend process, but your comments and your critique are not taken serious. So I would like that this community, for eye, nutrition, brain, try to help identify the type of journals that we can work to publish in. And I know that's difficult, but I think we just need to be alerted to this because it's important, guys. I mean, you're an editor in IOVS, Christine. How do you feel about this? We'll get you a mic.
It's coming.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I think, I publish a lot in IOVS and TVST because I feel like there's an invested community there.
Yeah, I agree.
That I want to be accountable to.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it's not as high profile, but I feel like I'm reaching the right audience.
Yeah.
And there are people who are trying to build their research programs on data that I might publish, and I owe it to them to get it right,
Yeah.
So, and the predatory journals, it is a business model. I mean, it's how fast, they have no motivation to reject because what they want is your page charge. That's what they're in it for. And the faster you're accepted and your page charges go through, they're happy. I'm thinking of complaining to them because their reproduction quality is terrible.
Yeah.
The reviewer PDFs are terrible. I'm looking at microscopy images that are low resolution, and maybe that's what, if we can identify a few specific things that they could address. I mean, if suddenly they had good reproduction and they let reviewers have more than a week, maybe it would be okay. But unless people complain and not just, reject the invitations, it may not change. And maybe it shouldn't. I don't know. Those are just some thoughts
I agree with
I
you
had.
with the complaint, and Marina challenges me on it because she sees the amount of time that I put into trying to fix this, and it's exhausting, and that's what they try to do. You don't go anywhere. I have about 60 emails to one particular journal on this particular case, and all for nothing, So it's a challenge, but I don't know what the action is, but I would like that we, as a community, are alerted to it. May I suggest that people make a recommendation of nutrition journals, eye journals, vision-sized journals, that we believe are bona fide and that, as you nicely put it, is represented by our community in terms of the type of reviewers.
What nutrition journals do you recommend?
The American Journal of Clinical Nutrition is definitely one, right?
Yeah.
Not another one,
Very, yeah, we're looking to make that, for the LZIP study, we want to do that, and we basically have to talk to the nutrition department.
To figure out,
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's hard to sort out. As you know, the predatory journals sound like the good journals. They do.
But thank you for having this conversation, because you're not saying it's not a problem. It is a problem.
Yes.
So I would like anyone who feels that there's a journal that has delivered, like we know IOVS, we know your ARVO journals do, JAMA, ophthalmology. There's these journals that we should encourage our best scientists to try and publish in.
Right.
So I'd like the Bond Network to create a list, and it can be an ever-changing list, but let's create a list that we encourage our scientists to, and colleagues and partners to try and publish in.
And maybe a black or gray list as well.
Yeah, and we have 2 more questions, actually.
Yes, and also not only the list of the journals that we are confident to, but also it will be very useful to have a list of the journals that we are clearly predator journals. It's not easy, probably it's not politically correct and who's going to sanction that list. But it's very important. Many times some of the students come, I have my paper, I think to send it to this journal, and there are so many names, and if it's not in your field, you don't know. And as Paul says, there are many names that are, like nice.
Yeah.
No, like serious names,
Yeah.
but suddenly they are not.
I think one generic piece of advice is look for something that calls itself a special issue. It's not that special, I can tell you. Yeah.
Just say no.
Yeah, just say no. Yeah, we have Quajo as a...
I also want to contribute to this discussion in the sense that I think it's great to have these recommended lists, but we also have to look at the financial implications. In resource-limited settings, most of these journals are now open access, and you need to pay for them. What I've done in the past is to look at some of these high-impact journals and request for waivers. And I've been good for most part. But for some journals, they might give only up to 50%, and you may have to try and cuff some more money to publish. So I'd also say that as we think about getting these recommended journals, we should also, as a community, possibly write to these editors and recommend that people maybe coming from low-income countries or based on the WHO recommended list should also be considered in waivers. And this can also help promote the field as we're also evolving in other settings.
Well, I'd like to support you with that, Quajo. If I can work with you on that, I'm happy to sign off requests on behalf of the Bond Committee to achieve that, and I think it's a very good approach.
Have the IOVS journals been good about that? They claim they claim that they are. I just want to make sure they really
sure
are.
they are.
Yeah, they really are. You need to
Okay.
apply well in advance with your abstract and everything. and then you go through it. Following that, you get an approval from the committee before you submit, and then you go through the review process. So that when you're accepted, then you already have guaranteed funding, rather than submitting before applying for that funding. So their procedure is also very, very good. Yeah.
Can we leave the last question to Frederick Schue? He's standing there.
How about two suggestions? This body here, plus the other two bodies that were on the agenda with International Carotenoid Society, I didn't remember where the first one was.
Gordon Conference.
How about you police your own field and you have a ranking of what the proper journals are, and those predatory journals that are still getting a high ranking because they are cited and their impact factor is up, don't get a good number. Or crazy idea, how about you start your own journal?
Yeah, both. I think other people were thinking that. The first point we actually, before you came in, we discussed and agreed to do that. We're going to create a list of. Yeah.
That's not so easy.
It's a lot of work. Yeah. The list of journals. So we all have little jobs, initial jobs. Marina's going to communicate with Liz on the. Quajo's going to work with me on the letters. And would anyone be interested in Nicole? Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a question?
Yeah, we have another.
Volunteer.
You're just going to work?
She's volunteering.
You're going to help Nicole?
Okay.
Brilliant, thank you. And Emmanuel as well. So that's great. There's a lot of energy with that one.
Please send the emails around so that we can all
Contribute. Yeah.
Please.
Well done.
Yep.
We done?
Okay. Well, we close, and we obviously want to thank John, Frederick, everyone here, the Howard Foundation, everyone. It's been wonderful. We look forward to coming back here someday, but not in 3 years, apparently. Okay.